turns out the 5 pounds of stuff you have isn't really what your mom wanted in the first place.
But things still might change for the next couple of sprints, just like tomorrow's weather forecast might change.
I think I'm going to dress up as scope creep for Halloween.
So here's a question that I get pretty often in our Scrum training classes. How do you avoid scope creep in Scrum? By scope creep, I'm assuming, when I've heard that phrase before, it's like, hey, there's a defined scope that we're trying to build into this project or this product, feature set, or whatever you want to say, and it tends to grow over time. We thought we'd be here, and towards the end of a project, we've tacked on additional things we didn't expect. So how do you avoid this idea of scope creep in Scrum?
It sounds really scary. Like it's going to creep up on you and it's going to scope creep. What are we afraid of here? Let's let the scope creep. If it's valuable, then creep it. I mean, that's my thinking. If it's not valuable, then don't creep it. So maybe it needs to be shoved through whatever scope is coming in, creeping or like jumping on you if you're being like attacked by creep, whatever. I don't know. Why doesn't it go through a value filter? And if it's not valuable, then it goes away. If it is valuable, then let's validate that by building it and go test out that theory. I don't know that you need to avoid scope creep. Maybe the question is the stuff that's being added to the product backlog valid to be added or not? And the product owner's got to make that call. So if they're maximizing value and they're letting junk in their product backlog, shame on them. They ought to know better than that. They took one of our classes, right? No, they haven't. So they need to come to one of our classes. So yeah, that's my thought on the scope creep.
Avoid scope creep. Come to our classes. I like
That's
it.
right.
Yeah. All right. Well, scope creep is usually a problem when you've got a 5-pound bag and you've already got 5 pounds of stuff in that bag. Any more pounds of stuff and you rip the bag. All right. Now, what if you had a bag that was flexible and it would allow things to come out and things to go back in again? And it turns out the 5 pounds of stuff you have isn't really what your mom wanted in the first place. So you pull out a pound of those things and you put in a pound of the things you know that she really wants. And sure, scope changed. But you're now making the person receiving this bag of things a happier person by putting the right things in that bag as you've learned more. And so we talked a little bit about the difference between a Scrum Master or a Scrum project or Scrum effort and traditional project management, where in traditional we're fixing time, scope, and budget. By using Scrum, we're allowing for some agility. We're allowing for us to change direction when we realize we're on the wrong path. And so scope creep, by adding new things into the mix, I mean, I would think you'd be prudent to remove the things that aren't quite so valuable out. But that flexibility we gain by using Scrum allows for not just scope creep, but scope decreep. Unbagging of some of the scope to allow for the new, more important things to come in. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those similar videos that we've had in the past where it's like, how many product owners can you have, or should you skip the daily Scrum? Because there's a really simple answer at the core of this, and there's just different ways to look at it. Scope creep isn't a thing in Scrum. We don't have a predetermined scope starting from day one, and I get why scope creep is such a negative thing when you do have a predetermined scope and a predetermined timeline and a predetermined budget, like you just said. You're suddenly trying to fit 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. The way I typically look at this is we're going to look sprint by sprint and see what's the next thing that we should do. Now, I don't mean that 100% literally, like we have no idea where we're going after the next sprint. No, we have an idea. We call that the product backlog. But we're not committing to it. We're not saying, these things in the product backlog are the things we will do over the next 6 months, 12 months, any amount of time. It's a forecast. And just like you trust the forecast for tomorrow more than you trust like the 14-day forecast, because it's a complex system and things can change, we're going to have a lot more confidence in what's coming up in the next couple of sprints than we will, things 6 months out in the product backlog. But things still might change for the next couple of sprints, just like tomorrow's weather forecast might change, because things might turn out differently than we expected. So stop thinking about in Scrum what we're going to do to this product as a predetermined list of things to do, and think more about outcomes we're aiming at. And then the scope flexes. The way we get there changes. It's not a fixed list so that fixed list can't creep. It's going to change as we learn more. And that's a good thing.
I think I'm going to dress up as scope creep for Halloween.
Right? That could be an interesting costume. We'll hold you to that, Greg.
Okay.
If you like this video, just leave us a comment. And if you got some positive feedback, we'd love to hear it. And if you've got some negative feedback, well, we'd love to hear that too.
And be sure to check out our description. We have our email list there and our upcoming classes so you can upgrade your knowledge and work on a certification.